High school graduate, really? Everyone in our department has a college degree, you know? When Jake, who was much younger than me, reacted with surprise, I gave a wry smile. He's fine. A beautiful voice came from behind me. In front of me, Jake's eyes widened in astonishment. I slowly turned around. There stood a beautiful woman in a pale pink suit. My name is Henry. I'm 50 years old. Today is the company's Christmas party. Though I'm not yet working at the main office. I've been working at a local subsidiary for many years, but I'm set to transfer to the main office in January. When I got the call about the transfer, Ms. Taylor, the president, suggested I attend the Christmas party. Since it was scheduled the day after my move, I agreed to attend without hesitation. Wow, it's huge. I stood hesitant in front of the large hotel where the party was being held. The Christmas party was to be a standing buffet in the hotel's grand ballroom. I timidly stepped into the hotel and headed to the reception desk. The paper I received at the reception looked like a wedding seating chart. It seemed there were tables for each department. I was assigned to the System Development Department at the main office. Alternating glances between the grand ballroom and the paper, I headed toward my table. The party was set to start at 6 p.m., but at 5:40 p.m., many people had already gathered and were chatting happily. People of all ages were having fun conversations, but I felt a bit intimidated looking at my table. Everyone looked young. They seemed to be in their 20s or 30s. Are there no people my age here yet? Feeling a bit uneasy, I approached the table, and a young man noticed me. He stared at me intently. Under his gaze, I decided to introduce myself. Excuse me. I'm Henry, set to join the System Development Department next month. Nice to meet you. When I greeted them, several people introduced themselves to me. The young colleague who had been staring at me also spoke up. I'm Jake. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Since he asked timidly, I confidently replied, I'm 50. Exclamations of surprise came from various places, and Jake was especially astonished. 50. You'll be the oldest in our department. Have you done something amazing? Where have you been until now? He bombarded me with questions. I smiled wryly and explained that I hadn't done anything special and had been working at a local subsidiary. Jake frowned. Are you sure? Honestly, the workload here is intense. I studied programming all through college and worked hard in related activities. But even I struggle with the main office's work. He mentioned that he graduated from a well-known college. If such an eager young person says it's intense, it must be quite a workload. I braced myself a bit. Well, I guess an old high school graduate like me will have to work extra hard. When I said that, Jake's eyes widened. High school graduate, really? Everyone in our department has a college degree. Even our manager Mark is in his early 40s. Realizing what he had said, Jake lowered his voice. Did you maybe mess up at the subsidiary? An old high school graduate among young college graduates. Feel free to ask me anything. I'll help you out. He seemed to have misunderstood something. As he said that, Jake extended his right hand to me. He's probably not a bad kid. I smiled wryly and reached out to shake his hand. At that moment, he's fine. A beautiful voice came from behind me. In front of me, Jake's eyes widened in astonishment. I slowly turned around. There stood the president of the company, Ms. Taylor, dressed in a pale pink suit. She was 40, 10 years younger than me, but had a youthful, vibrant complexion. Her distinct double eyelids and slightly drooping eyes gave her a gentle appearance, and her lightly colored lips had a touch of deep red. With her good posture and slim legs, she looked great in heels. It's been a while. I greeted her. She looked slightly flustered. Henry. I've been looking forward to seeing you. Her eyes were slightly moist. Surprised by our interaction, Jake asked for an explanation. I smiled wryly and recalled the past. I joined this company right after graduating high school. I still remember how my heart raced when I first touched a computer in middle school. Using all my saved money, I bought a bulky, old-fashioned computer and started programming from a textbook. It was more fun than I had imagined, and my heart soared. My parents, who were busy with their jobs, naturally assumed I would go to a general high school and then to college. But I wanted to attend a technical high school. My parents said I could study engineering in college, but I insisted on studying computers right away. It was my paternal grandmother, who raised me in place of my busy parents, who persuaded them. She said, "I've never seen Henry so passionate. If he has something he loves, parents should support him." With her help, I convinced my parents. Graduating at the top of my class from the technical high school, I was recommended by the school and got a job at a top-tier company. Although it meant leaving my hometown, my grandmother was very happy. At 32, a turning point came. Ms. Taylor, the president's daughter, joined the company, and I, then in the systems department, became her mentor. I had heard that she was the only daughter of the president and would eventually take over the company. So, she was rotating through various departments to learn. I've studied in many departments, but this is really interesting. I want to learn more and more. With sparkling eyes, she eagerly learned programming languages. I taught her the work with a light-hearted feeling. She stayed in the systems department for about 6 months, and in that time, we became good friends, secretly going out for meals together. I had a faint crush on her. What I loved most was her bright smile and curiosity about everything. But she was a young and beautiful president's daughter. There was no way my feelings could reach her. I spent my days hiding my feelings, content to be her confidant. Then, my parents passed away. They were involved in a multi-car accident while out shopping on a weekend. In a daze, I confirmed their bodies and prepared for the funeral with the help of relatives. I noticed my grandmother's strange behavior on the night of the wake. "Where is Michael?" Suddenly, my grandmother called out my father's name. I had been staying up all night as I couldn't sleep, with my grandmother sleeping nearby. Ever since my parents' accident, my grandmother had been crying constantly, and when I arrived, she seemed to have shrunk in size. "Grandma, Dad is all ready." I began to tell her, my face grim. But my grandmother looked at me and smiled. "Oh, Michael, there you are." My drowsiness vanished in an instant. "Grandma? Do you know who I am?" When I asked in a panic, there was a brief pause before she sadly said, "Oh. Henry, you came." I felt slightly relieved, but her behavior continued to be strange at times. After the funeral, I took her to the hospital, where they said it was likely temporary confusion caused by the shock of losing her son and daughter-in-law. However, given her age, there was a risk of her developing dementia, and they advised not to leave her alone. So I requested a month off from work, which was granted. If it was just temporary shock, they expected improvement within a month. As Dr. Mitchell predicted, her strange behavior gradually improved, but her face always seemed sad. As the month was coming to an end, she forced a smile and said, "Henry, I've caused you trouble. And your company too. I'm okay now. So go back to work." Though her smile still seemed a bit precarious, I couldn't take more time off work, so I returned. But I couldn't focus, worried about my grandmother, and started making mistakes. Emily was worried about me and invited me out for dinner. It was embarrassing to have someone I had feelings for, 10 years younger, worry about me. But I wanted to lean on her. I talked about my grandmother. Should I quit my job? Should I go back to the countryside? I voiced my doubts and, taking advantage of the counter seating, rested my head on her shoulder. When I tried to gently hold her hand, it was wet. I hurriedly looked at Emily. She was crying. As I panicked, she said through her tears, "I think you should go back to your grandmother." I felt the same. I thought I had no choice. I wanted someone to push me. But I didn't want it to come from Emily. It felt like I was being rejected, even though I hadn't confessed my feelings. Through her falling tears, she said, "I'll be sad if you leave, but right now, I think your grandmother needs you more than anyone." Could I take her endless tears as a sign that she had some feelings for me? I quietly closed my eyes and said, "Thank you. I'll go back to her." I never confessed my feelings to Emily. And so, I returned to my hometown. However, thanks to Emily's intervention, I was transferred to a related subsidiary there. I was grateful to Emily. Although it was in the countryside, the subsidiary was a system development company, so I could continue doing the work I loved, albeit on a smaller scale. Emily smiled faintly and said, "Your knowledge and skills are too valuable to waste. Do your best over there."